Okay, welcome to Alberta Homeschooling Association, our webinar tonight on homeschooling and brain development stages. Thank you very much for joining us. And so my name is Judy Arnall, and I'm a homeschooling consultant, and I also am interested in brain theory. I've taken the brain story certification course, and I've also taken the growing brain from 0 to 3. And I've always been fascinated in how learning fits with how children develop. And having raised 5 of my own kids, I've seen definite stages of leaps and bounds, and also stages of stagnant, what looks like stagnant learning or lack of it in my own family. So I unschooled my 5 children, and they're all adults now, except the last one who's, almost on the cusp of adulthood. And so we've unschooled mostly, and they've entered university, and 3 are graduates, and 1's still there, and my young one is at home doing his thing. So I've written 2 books on parenting. One is on non-punitive discipline, and the other one is how to handle anger before you get to the non-punitive discipline. In every book that I publish, I include charts on child development, because I think it's really important. Parents need to know what to expect, what's normal. I also have some new books out called Attachment Parenting Tips, and there's no theory in that, just solutions. And then the Unschooling to University book just came out in the fall, and that is 384 pages detailing our journey through unschooling to university. Okay, so let's look at the stages. So children across the world, any culture, any country, develop in exactly the same sequence, and they have done it for 100 million years. I've even been to the Smithsonian Museum last week, and same thing too. Children develop, even as hominids, they develop in the same sequence. They get their motor control before their fine motor control. So they develop physically, cognitively, socially, and emotionally in 4 dimensions. And every child has their own timetable. You will notice some kids learn to read at age 4, sometimes 3, and other kids don't read until 11, 12. And that is within a normal range. It's more our society that puts on artificial deadlines on things. But kids have a very well range of how they develop. So a baby is born with 100 billion of these little brain cells. So these brain cells are called nerve cells, and they comprise of several parts. So these thick parts here are called axons, and these little thread-like things are called dendrites. And what in the middle here, this little sausage area, is more the body of the nerve cell. And in the teen years, this has a fatty thickening called the myelin sheath, and that thickens as the child gets their critical thinking skills. So what nerve cells do is they reach out to neighboring nerve cells. The axons reach out to the dendrites, and they send a neurotransmitter across that gap in order to make a pathway. And that's really good. So in the first 6 years, there are lots of pathways being formed because they're based on experiences. So the more experience a child has, the more pathways and connections are made until they're 6. And that's when the brain starts pruning pathways and strengthening the ones that are used continuously, and letting go or pruning the ones that are not used. So, for example, if a child is learning French, in the home. They have a parent in the home that teaches them French or speaks French. And then say the child at age 6, the parent leaves the home. A lot of those pathways would be pruned. Sorry for the background noise. It's dinner time at my house. So a lot of those are pruned, but that's a good thing. So they get stronger, but it works on a use it or lose it basis. So if kids go into French immersion and they learn French up until 15, for example, and then they don't get it for 5 years, they regress. They lose all those French connections in their brain. That's not to say that they can't get it back or there's never a time they can't learn languages. It's just may take more effort. In the early years, there are certain windows of sensitivity for learning things a lot easier than later. Okay, and also what you may have noticed in your children is that certain periods of time, kids kind of oscillate between equilibrium and disequilibrium. So they might go through times where they're extra cranky or they're just not happy about things. That's what we call disequilibrium. I know this slide is a little hard to see. Let me see if I can just bring that picture up a bit bigger. Maybe not. And so that's something to consider too. You know, if, for example, toilet training occurs when kids are 2.5, and that's in a out of balance disequilibrium cycle. So kids may be a little more cranky around then. Maybe that's not a good time to toilet train. Maybe wait until 3, where it's a more calm equilibrium time in the cycle of their development. This is from Alberta Health Services, by the way. So that's something to keep in mind too. Okay, this is one of my favorite slides. I often ask people, can a 3-year-old play chess? A game of chess. And most people say no, they can't, especially if they have a 3-year-old. And then I ask people, can a 7-year-old play chess? And then they say yes. And I say, this is why. This is the development of the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of the brain that comprises decision-making, planning, critical thinking, self-control, focus. So as you can see, a 3-year-old has very little executive function, especially compared to a 25-year-old, which is where it maxes out here. So the first 3 years are not a whole lot of self-control. And this is important to keep in mind when you're homeschooling your kids and you find they're not listening to you, or they're not concentrating on their work, or they don't want to do the work. From age 3 to age 6, they're taking a huge leap in self-control here and executive function. And this is why kids don't start mandatory school until age 6, because they need a certain level of control to sit still, pay attention, not bug their little neighbor in the desk next to them, and follow rules and have some self-control. So they don't have it until 6, and that's why kids who go to school in England at age 4 or 3, it better be play-based, because they're not going to sit still very much either. And say with 5, they're gaining it at 5, but 6 is, even 7 in Finland, is they have a lot more self-control there. So just keep that in mind. And then it kind of plateaus out here from about age 6 to age 13, it plateaus out, but it keeps increasing. And then from 13, the next big leap is age 17. And myself and my friends who have homeschooled our teenagers really have noticed that from 13 to 15, kids, you know, they're more interested in other things like video games and stuff like that. But by about age 17, they start to really make that last leap of executive function and start to become more serious about schooling, about what they want to do for life's work, and they really start buckling down and getting motivated to plan out their future. And you can see here by 25, that's where the brain peaks, and after that it's a little downhill from there. So executive function has 4 components. Working memory. So in chess, for example, that's the ability to hold thoughts in their head that the queen moves one way and the castle moves another way. Okay, focus. So filtering out distractions. That's that ability to concentrate in the game. I sometimes lack that. I can play a game of chess with my kids and I'm thinking, what am I going to make for dinner? Got to move that load of laundry. Oh, got to return that phone call. It's really hard for me to filter those distractions. So my executive function focus is not very good at times. Self-control, that ability to take turns and not throw the board across the room when they lose. And planning, especially plan B. So if one player takes away his queen, then he's got to figure out what he's going to do instead. Now he has to make a new plan. And those are all abilities of executive function. So I hope you burn this slide into your mind. This is how it goes. So there's a not much self-control here from 0 to 3. You're just keeping those little toddlers safe and keeping your stuff safe. But from 3 until 6, huge leap in executive function. From 6 to 13 kind of plateaus out, and then 13 to 25, that last leap there. Okay, so young children. So from 0 to 6, young children aren't ready for school yet because they have these cognitive limitations. They're very egocentric. They don't really have empathy for other people. They're gaining it, but it's still about them and their world. They have a great imaginations. They think animals and objects are human, and that helps their play and project human lifelike things on their play. Or object transference, where they will pick up a spoon and pretend it's a phone. They're very black-white thinkers and very magical thinking. They wish things come true. I don't know if you've ever walked in on your child and you know how they eat cookies, they have this chocolate around their mouth. And you would put out a plate of cookies for company and you notice a few are missing and you say, okay, who ate the cookies? And they're telling you that a dragon flew in and took the cookies. That's their magical thinking. They're not really lying. They're just thinking that way. Lack of impulse control, as we can see from the slide on executive function, and a sense of omnipotence, grandiosity, where they have no idea about safety, what could be dangerous, or what they should be putting in place to make things safe. So every child is unique. Every child reaches developmental milestones at different ages within a range and stages. Every child has a unique temperament, a personality trait. Birth order sometimes affects how children are because we are different parents for every child in the birth order. Every child has a different learning style. They have a strong intelligence. They're different genders. They have different love languages. And for the most part, they have different genes. They inherit genes from the family, but whether those genes are expressed depends on their experiences. So all of childhood is a stage. It really is. And these are different types of stages. So let's go through them. Each stage develops as per parts of the brain. So for example, infants have a very well-developed brain stem, a bit of the hippocampus limbic system in the temporal lobe, but not so much these lobes. The occipital lobe, babies do have a very developed occipital lobe, but not so much the parietal or the frontal lobe. So in all cultures across the world, children develop from the brain stem up from the back of the brain to the front. And actually their bodies develop that way too, from the center to the outside and from the bottom up. So for example, children get to crawl before they can walk. Okay, they can walk before they can manage stairs or climb, that kind of thing. They can get control of their inner body before they can maneuver their fine motor finger skills. Okay, these are the stages. We're going to go through them one by one and what that means for homeschooling. So little babies are natural learners. You don't have to teach a child to learn, they learn. So even a 6-month-old, you watch them put together a shape sorter and they're learning cause and effect and trial and error. They're trying to put that square shape into the round hole, and then they throw it across the room out of frustration. So mostly, like I said before, this part of the brain is the most sensitive, the brain stem, and feeling their senses and crying. That's their input and output. Their job is to develop trust and attachment. Little toddlers, 6 to 18 months, so their whole job is, you see that curiosity in action where they have no sense of safety. So explore, explore, explore. And kids explore from this age onward till they're 20 years old. It's us who have to get out of the way and teach them a little bit about safety, put some safety limits on, but kids are natural explorers. You do not have to teach them to be curious. So at this stage, children are learning language. These are typical issues at that stage. Next stage is 18 months to 3 years. So this is the middle of the brain, that temporal lobe, where they start feeling strong feelings and starting to think. These are some characteristics of that stage. So no self-control. Like I said, 0 to 3, hardly any self-control. They love being around their loved ones. They don't have self-control of hitting, pushing, biting. They need their security, but they're becoming little independent people. And they have strong feelings and tantrums and a very short attention span. So, for example, at this stage, a lot of parents sign their kids up for library programs or often even preschool. Early preschool at 2 to 3 years should always be play-based. No worksheets, no formal education, because the brain, they don't have the self-control to sit and listen. Okay, this is the stage parents think they have to teach the parenting the most. And really, this is a stage kids can handle it the least. So this is a stage their brains don't have a whole lot of self-control. So you're just doing damage control, keeping them safe, keeping your house safe. Most of your teaching will be in the school years when their brains can handle it. And so don't project, like parents think, oh, I got to nip this hitting at the bud when they're 2 years old, or, you know, they're going to be 15 and hitting. And that's not true because their brain's in a different stage. And so when your little girl is saying up, up at 2, you know, she's needing that closeness so that when she's 12, she has that good relationship with you and she looks up to you and takes in a lot of teaching. And when she's 22, she'll take you to Italy. It's so much fun. So next stage, 3 to 6 years. So this is the years a lot of parents put their kids in preschool. And again, I do stress across Alberta Health Services, everywhere, we stress it's got to be play-based, no formal worksheets. And this is just a stage. Preschool is not necessary. It's a nice to have, but not needs to have. In fact, according to the OECD, only about 50% of Canada's preschoolers actually attend a formal preschool program. Although you'd think it was a lot more by all that advertising out there. But this is a stage that the back of the brain is really starting to be sensitive, the cerebral cortex. They're asking a lot of questions. They think, why is the sky blue? Where does the snow come from? Where do squirrels go in winter? And that's a sign that they're really, really wanting to soak up information. So you're homeschooling at this stage because you're answering all those questions. And they love it. They love the answers. And this is a stage where they're starting to think about what's reality, what's fantasy, although they really don't have a good handle on the difference between reality and fantasy until about age 8. They're starting to get really intense imaginations. So this is why at this stage they're worried about monsters at night. They can do imaginative play with other kids. So it really comes into focus at this stage. These are some characteristics of preschoolers. I'll just let you read those. But one thing for homeschooling is they have a short attention span. Even coming to dinner and sitting at the table maybe lasts 5 minutes. So they move. They're designed to move. Every bit of learning should be kinesthetic, hands-on, and lots of field trips, lots of parks, lots of libraries, lots of running around, and they can ask a lot of questions. Okay, next stage. These are the typical elementary years. Now, this is the top part of the brain. They're starting to think logically, but concretely. What that means is if you look at the grade 1 to grade 6 curriculum, all the topics are things that children experience in their environment. So for science, you look at color, grade 1, rocks and minerals, grade 3, wetlands, grade 5, waste in our world, grade 4, air and flight, grade 6. Those are all topics children can see, hear, touch, smell, and look at because they're still very concrete. It has to be in their world for them to understand it. Whereas your shift happens in grade 7 when they start getting their critical thinking skills, their abstract thinking skills, and they can start thinking more theoretically. So these are great years to, again, understand their environment. Now in school, because schools are dealing with 30 to 35 kids, most of what they teach in school has to be book-based because that's the most efficient way to deliver to 35 kids. But you don't. You're at home. You can go on field trips. You can get them watching movies, they playing, doing projects, doing hands-on things. That is the best way kids learn through these years is kinesthetically. Hands-on. So if you have a very paper-based curriculum and your child is saying no, follow your child because they're not ready for it until the abstract thinking years, which is the teen years. Even then, a lot of teens learn better and adults learn better through kinesthetic learning. So here's some characteristics of school-agers, developmental characteristics. So early years 6 to 9, they're still concrete black-white thinkers. Not a lot of gray areas in their thinking. And as they're heading into the tween years, you'll notice they're growing out of toys. So their play becomes less of Lego, less of Barbies, more of online Roblox, different types of play, Minecraft, blogs, creating art online. Okay, and then the teen years are when the real learning happens. So this is the development of the prefrontal cortex, right? So they're starting to think abstractly, and that little feeling stage is back there. What's important here is this is a stage where kids will remember a lot of their learning. I don't know if I have that slide here. Maybe not. But so when I give this presentation to adults. I ask them, what do you remember from grade 4? And they don't remember anything, but they remember a lot of their school age years in the teen years. And I asked my kids that too. I said, what childhood friend did you have in the elementary years? They can't remember. They can only remember about as far back as 13. So I said, well, do you remember the boats and buoyancy experiment we did in grade 2? And they said, no. And do you remember when we went to all those homeschool groups? No. The only thing they remember is the Pokemon toy dispenser in the lobby of our homeschooling meetup place. So keep that in mind. If they don't get long division in grade 5, don't worry, because this is the years they're going to get it. It's going to make a lot more sense. And that is why unschoolers can learn 8 or 9 grades of math in 1 year, because they have the theoretical thinking skills and they can push through material really fast, super fast. It's not like they're learning 8 grades of math anyways. They have been experiencing math through having a lemonade stand or through selling Girl Guide cookies or whatever, or having an allowance or going shopping or baking. They get the math, but this is the stage that they're really good at putting things to paper. And a lot of children go online at this stage or self-teach through reading, a lot of reading, self-study, and the primary delivery here tends to be textbooks or books or picture books or novels or online research. At this stage, a lot of my kids, 13, 14, went online and just read. They read blogs, they read opinions, they read books, and they formulated a lot of their thinking skills through that stage. So this is a good stage that a lot of unschoolers do start a little more formal programs. 13 to 15 is really junior high years. Yeah, okay. But they may not be so keen to learn, but definitely by about 17, 18, 19, those are good years to do a more academic program as they're heading into career choices. So these are some characteristics, developmental characteristics of teenagers. Notice that sense of omnipotence again, where, oh, I'll be safe, it won't happen to me, that's for other people. They still don't have those thinking skills of really critically thinking and having that self-control to not do risky behaviors, right? So their myelin sheath is still thickening in their neuron cells, and that is competing with the dopamine that their brains want. Their brains want the dopamine hit, but the brakes in their prefrontal cortex hasn't quite developed that self-control yet. So teens tend to not think things out. They still need their external brain called parents. Yay. And then from 19 to 25, again, fine-tuning that prefrontal cortex. And this is what, 19? So they're becoming able to think critically and logically, gaining more common sense and having the brakes to follow through. Okay, so that's about all I have on brain development, and I would be very happy to take any questions. If you want to write in the chat box, or you know what, I could just probably, I wonder if I could, how do we do that? Ooh, maybe I could unmute you all. Yes, I can. Okay, you're all unmuted if you want to chat. It's up to you. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, good.
I did have a quick question. I wanted to, I'm very new to this. I mean, my son is not yet, well, he'll be turning 4 soon. So I had wondered if I would start kind of doing a kindergarten-based, homeschooling when he turned 5. So I've just been getting as much information as I possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you would be willing to share about unschooling. I think that I may have a very, I don't know, somewhat archaic view of what unschooling is, where there isn't much structure to it, but it seems like for you with learning the developmental stages of the brain and then choosing to do unschooling for your kids, I just wanted to see if you would be able to explain, briefly on that to maybe help me understand.
Sure. Yeah. So unschooling is in Alberta education, that would be a methodology called self-directed education. So you'd have resources, and the child decides. And basically, it's play. It's just play at different age groups. So we technically are all unschoolers until we say to kids at age 6, oh, you have to go to school now. So when you look at your 4-year-old and he loves giraffes and he wants some toys, like some plastic giraffes to play with, or he wants to read books about giraffes, or he wants to watch videos on giraffes, you're an unschooler because he's deciding what he wants to know more about, and you're providing the resources for him, right? So you do that all the way along. So kids get different interests, and it depends on the child. Like I had some boys interested in trains and some didn't. So whenever they indicate an interest in something, you kind of observe them and say, oh, do you want more? And you offer them more things to learn or play with or read about. So basically that's what unschooling is. Different families have different structure. Like a lot of unschooling families do not impose bedtimes or meal times, and a lot do, right? So it's whatever works for your family, but at its core, it is just educational freedom. Whatever they want to learn about, they're free to learn. How that fits is, I think every child has their own learning agenda, and we tend to sidetrack that and make them learn what we want them to learn. And for a lot of kids, that's good. They like that. They want to be directly taught, but a lot of kids resist it, including mine. So I found it was just easier to go with what they wanted to learn rather than to impose what my government curriculum did. So we just went with what they wanted to learn. And you know what? A lot of the topics in grade 1 to 6 are naturally what kids want to learn about too. So I was quite amazed at how they just gravitated to those things naturally, like magnets in grade 3, I think it is, or boats, or rocks. Kids love rocks. Most kids love playing with magnets, but it doesn't have to be a strict curriculum. So let them, and that's what I found too, is that kids will take in as much as their brain development can handle. So unschooling is more conducive to their learning because they take something in and then they put it away, and then maybe they're 13 and want to learn more about rocks, and then they can understand it at a deeper level. So it's very child orientated, and it's very, very good. Now, it doesn't create jobs for anybody in writing curriculum, but it's a very organic way of learning. So now in Alberta, there is no mandatory kindergarten. So because kindergarten is voluntary, it's not funded through homeschooling. So even when kids do go to school, and take kindergarten, it's very play-based. They have centers. They have like the block center and the Lego center and the computer center and the art center. And it's very fun, play-based. The real serious learning starts in grade 1. So, so you just keep on doing a play program at home for your child, and just keep doing that if you want to continue unschooling. And then the last part of that is my experience is generally kids will unschool until about 16, 17, maybe earlier. And then they start really becoming passionate on what they want to do for a life work. And then they go and get the formal education if they need it, what courses they need to get where. So, so yeah, that's how unschooling works. I hope that answers your question. Okay, we have another question. What about a young child, 3 years old, who wants to write when he sees an elder writing and he wants books? Is it okay to give him tracing and coloring books? Absolutely. As parents and caregivers, you know what your child's interested in. And if they're interested in seeing something that you do or their siblings do, let them do it. Make that work for them. As much as possible, get them the resources, get them the books. You know, it's great. If they're really interested in something, run with it, I would say. Because that interest might not spark, you know, a year from now or 5 years from now when they're supposed to get it in school. So learning happens immediately. So give them as much as possible and they'll take in what they can take in. Okay, any more questions? Yep, hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so
okay, I think I lost you now.
my question is and what I'm, you hear me okay?
Yes, now I can.
Okay, so my little guy, he's 5 and he has high functioning autism. What I'm finding with him is he's atypical. So, you know, I have a lot of experience with typical development, but with him, I'm noticing like,
Hello, sorry, I'm not hearing. Oh dear. Why that's not working? I don't think your microphone's working. Hello? Can anyone else hear our question person? Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. I can't hear you, but if you could just kind of fine-tune your microphone and we'll come back to you. Okay, in the meantime, I got another question. So this is, what about screen time and brain development? I have 2 with speech delay and don't want it to interfere with promoting speech. Okay, so screen time. Screen time is good. There's lots of great stuff out there on screen time. And actually, there's no recommendations now for school-age children, just because kids are getting so much screen time in school. So, but what is important is to develop language skills. Now, a lot of language is developed by age 5, but keep developing it. So keep talking to your children, keep reading books, keep doing songs, and that serve and return response. Talk, return, serve. And that is what promotes speech and vocabulary and a really good, rich vocabulary. So for all parents, we tell them, keep talking to your kids, keep using language. A lot of times the screen time problem is parents when we're raising the silent generation, because we're being silent too. So best practices are keep talking. But screen time is good. There's a lot of great things to do on screen. For young children, make sure they still get exercise, outdoor time, just free play time. Most children still learn through their 5 senses in a 3-dimensional world, all the way up to age 12. So as much as possible, let them play, let them smell, taste, touch. Screen time only touches 2 of those senses, so make sure they have toys around, art supplies, and project materials. One of the questions is, for grade 1, when we are preparing curriculum, if we're using limited books, what do we back up our resources as for Alberta? Alberta education does not have resources anymore. So all the education system works is that there are outcomes to be met. So for grade 1, one of the outcomes may be learn colors. So how you teach that, you could teach it by giving them a workbook, or you could teach them by giving them paint. So even in schools, teachers are allowed to use resources, any resources they think will get the outcomes covered, and so are we. So it's up to you. You can use whatever you want. And you can get it funded. So if you want it funded, it should be on your learning plan. Yeah, if you have trouble, absolutely ask your school what would be good curriculum. But I'm saying in terms of brain development, make sure you have a lot of hands-on toy type things. That's how kids learn, especially a 6-year-old. They learn through toys and play. So the more it can be fun, the better. Okay, your question was, my high-functioning autism son is 5, and I'm noticing he's atypical, very much interested in video games and computer programming peers. And do children with autism, do their brains develop differently, like some areas are more developed than they typically would be? That's a question I don't know. Sorry. Most of my study is on typical brain development. However, I do, just from anecdotal experience, we have friends who have Asperger's, have high-functioning autism, and yeah, they are way ahead in some areas. Mathematically, computer programming, amazingly smart. So, if your child's interested in those things, like I say, run with it. Give them what they need, what they want to learn, what they're curious about. Yeah, very much like a teenager yet not started grade 1. Yeah, but recognize that, he could be very advanced cognitively, but recognize socially and emotionally, he's probably still a 5-year-old, right? So, but yeah, that's great. He sounds very gifted. The challenge is going to be finding him resources. But there are a lot of great websites and computer programming sites, like 3 Schools, is that it? Web3 Schools is a computer coding site. There's a lot of resources online that would help satisfy his curiosity, I bet. Sherilyn, can your son read? Oh, awesome. Nice. Yeah. See, you'll find that he'll go way farther than what you're able to teach him. And, you know, that's self-directed education. Like, he's going to learn so much just by finding stuff on his own. We think we're the teachers of kids, but boy, do they learn. They learn things we don't know. Okay, any more? Okay, another question. You mentioned that in the teen years, your children had learned many years of math in 1 year. If you have to meet Alberta education requirements each year from grade 1 and on, how did that work without these requirements being met? Oh, that's an excellent question. And what I'm going to do is, you don't have to follow the Alberta program of studies, though, when you homeschool. I will show you what you have to follow. Let me just show you. Anyways, what you have to follow is 22 outcomes. So what that means is, I reference the 22 outcomes. You know what? Let me just. The 22 outcomes are on home education, and they have to meet it by the time they're 19. So that means you do not have to follow grade by grade outcomes. And there are like 1,400 outcomes per grade. So there it is. This is what you have to follow. So your child must know all these things by the time they're 19 under home education. So you have a lot of flexibility not to teach math for the first 8 years. Okay, now you can follow this, or you can follow the grade by grade outcomes. It's up to you. And a lot of homeschoolers, when they're new, they want to do what the schools are doing, so they follow grade by grade until, you know, kids put their foot down and say, no, I don't want to do fractions. And then they wait until kids are ready. Okay, another question is, when your children were doing online research, reading blogs, reading website content, did you monitor what they were reading? No, but I think that's more of an individual family choice. I've tried to develop relationships with my kids that if they had any questions or they ran across objectionable material and they wanted to talk about it, they would come to me. So I trusted that they would, you know, I trusted that they wouldn't go into the dark web, I guess. Now I have a son that works in computers, so I'm sure he's been there, but no, I didn't put any controls or limits on, but a lot of families do, you know, and that's an individual choice whether they want to do that or not. So you can definitely put filters on. Like, for example, there's a kids YouTube, so you can say, you know, you only are limited to kids YouTube and not regular YouTube. So it's up to you. Definitely by the teen years, teens start to get smarter than parents, and they do a lot of workarounds if you put limits on. So especially as they start to know technology more than you do. So yeah. Yeah, so as far as math, we didn't do any math, paper math, until grade 8. And then they learned everything. They learned how to do fractions on paper, how to do long division, how to do ordered pairs. And it's not to say they didn't know that stuff. I mean, we played a game of Battleship and they learned ordered pairs, but they didn't really learn the formal paperwork curriculum until grade 8. And 3 of my kids went into STEM fields in university. So first math class was grade 8. Okay, any other questions on things? Our webinar next month is, I think, the benefits of video games in July. So feel free to join us. Yes, all about screen time and video games. Yay! So that will be the 3rd Wednesday of the month, which is July. I don't know where it is right now. Okay, would you recommend any particular content on getting more info on unlearning? I would suggest, well, we have a Alberta Unschooling Families Facebook group. If you're on Facebook, come join us there. So Unschooling Families. There is on the alberta-homeschooling-association website, there's some learning plan samples that were written for unschooling families. Unschoolingcanada.ca is a website with lots of information. So if you go to here, there should be some learning plans here. Okay, so these are the Alberta programs of studies if you want to follow them grade by grade. And here's some sample education plans if you want to do a more unschooling approach. Okay, so let's look at grade 1 here. Oh, is that going to open? Yeah, there we go. So you can see this is what we did. Our goal is to provide our son with a self-directed education program. So for English, we said we'd get some library books out and we'd read. And we would submit one writing sample. So I think I submitted a grocery list my son made. Actually, he wasn't writing in grade 1, so probably didn't do that. We learned math by using money, by baking, by doing Lego. We learned science through nature walks and discussion, and through going to the science center, the zoo. We learned social studies by watching Disney movies and having topics, discussions. We learned the rest through art, through going to the theater, phys ed through going skiing, that kind of stuff. So it's a very simple learning plan. And oftentimes I do the same learning plan, file it year after year, and just make changes based on what my child's interested in. Okay, that's all you have to file is a learning plan. So, and some other resources if you want to go to Unschooling Canada. There is a lot of information here, some books, some videos, articles and research. And if you want to go to my blog, there's my blog. That kind of tells the story of my 5 kids. And there's lots of different articles on here. Unschooling FAQ is right here, so it answers all your questions. A lot of questions that you're going to get from relatives. So there's a lot of information here that will help you. Lots of reading, lots of video. Okay, I think we have one more question here. Nope, we don't. Okay, well, we're almost at 8 o'clock, so I'm going to wrap it up. So thank you for coming tonight. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I am at, how do I get back now? Where is it? Yes. So here's my email address right there, jarnall@shaw.ca. If you want to email me, I'd be happy to answer your questions. So thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a month. Bye-bye.